Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Hilchos Gezelav Aveda Pedek Hamisha Asar. We are dedicating today's class L'Refuah Shalema to Michal Bas Rachel. Amen. This chapter is going to give us a very big rule concerning all lost articles, and that is that when a person finds something out there, if halachically we're going to presume the chazaka will be that the owner left it there, not lost it, then even though the person has good intentions, they're taking it to give it back to its owner, they're doing a terrible disservice. With many pratim of this big concept, this chapter has 18 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Says that let's take a big step back because we spoke so much about a siman. We spoke about the three levels of simanim. Independent. Bein sheyesh ba siman, bein she'ein ba siman. Yesh ba siman means it has the highest level of a siman mover. The owner will be able to identify it. Nevertheless, the rule is that let's go like this. If it appears, and we'll define that more, that the owner intentionally put it down, he was maniach it, also ligaba. You can't even touch it. Why? Because Shema be'oleh, maybe the owner left it there until when the owner comes back. I mean, the whole thing is to do a mitzvah of returning something that's lost. Who told you it's lost? Furthermore, now Mela, when there's a siman, it's always us. But imagine the owner's going to come to retrieve it. Let's say if the article that you picked up has no siman, then he'll never be able to get it back. And furthermore, says that Rambam, and even if there is a siman, so what? You're causing the owner to have to run after it. And therefore, the word yimsa means it appears, like before. Until it appears that it was derech nefila, that it had fallen. Now, before we get into more details, another big rule. Even if the finder has a doubt, we're not talking about presumptions. You look at it, it's 50-50. Still, however, if the person did not follow this rule and they picked it up, so now a person will think, you come back home and you share with your family, you're proud. I went by and I did the mitzvah, and guys, we learned already that it's not so simple, how the responsibility that you have until you find the owner, and they notify you of this halach. So the first reaction might be, I'll put it back there. Also awesome. This we learned in the Gemara. Why? Think about it. Let's say an owner put something intentionally in a certain location. When you picked it up with the best intentions, between when you picked it up and when you're going to put it back, during that time, it's possible the owner went back to retrieve it. The owner did not see it there. Once the owner doesn't see it there, what does the owner understand? Someone took it. Now, he's going to look for a person who took it, but he'll never go back to that location. So now the worst thing is, you're going to put it back down in that location. You're going to think you fulfilled your obligation. You put it back there. The owner will never go back there. You won't even announce anything. So weiter, the owner lost out. Verstehst? Also, but indeed, if post facto the thing doesn't have a siman, there's nothing you can do, meaning you will end up owning it. Now,
Rabbi, what tells you whether you should pick it up or not then?
Wait. Okay. We always begin. We're already into this. In other words, first we give the rule, and now we're going to give many examples, and everything is meduik. But Yosef, the Rambam is going to give, let's say, 10 examples. Why not 11? Why not 9? B'stama, every example that Rambam gives has another unique chiddush and nuance. And when we will be enlightened, halavai, one day, we'll chap that from all of the examples that Rambam will give, we'll know bidiyuk. When halachically do we presume that it was intentionally placed down, and when should we presume that it had fallen? Halacha base. Anything that has a siman, bein derech hanocha, bein derech nefila, bein b'rishus hayachad, bein b'rishus Rambam was speaking about post facto that you picked it up, since it has a siman. Chayv lahachris, like we mentioned, and don't put it back, but not don't put it back and do nothing. No, now you have to announce it. Case that, for example, case of that hanocha, even that's for you. So let's give examples where halacha is going to tell us how should we interpret that what we see was halachically presumed to have been placed intentionally. That's the pshat hanocha. From now on, we'll just say the word hanocha. If a person finds either a chamoy or a pada, they are pasturing on the path during the day, and it's common practice for owners to leave their animals pasture freely during the day. If you find a utensil in a garbage heap that is hidden, that is in there, not exposed, and I know that Rambam is going to go back soon to this concept of the ashpa. And this is the meaning of the pasuk nidachim. Mamash, the Torah says that the animals are going astray. Okay, in our cases, they're not going astray. Now, but if you find a donkey or kalim that they are afuchim, they don't look like the owner left it. They're upside down. Or if you have a cow that's running in between a vineyard. Now we're going to learn in a moment two things. First of all, the animal can get hurt by running through a vineyard, and the owner of the vineyard, if it's a yid, will lose his vines because of the pada. In other words, when we already began this whole topic by saying that if I see that someone else's property is about to get lost, part of the mitzvah of Hashavas Haveda is to prevent that from happening. If you find something but that's exposed in the garbage dump, furthermore, halacha gimel, but not by day, but by night. Now, normally, owners keep their animals by them during the night. Then we say harezu aved. What happens if it's bifnois hayoim? Bifnois hayoim means at the end of the day. We call that twilight or baneshef dawn. So then, like this, imra oisam shloish yomam zachar zeh. Minastam, it's lost. Only if it's 3 days consecutive. Harezu aved, which means less than that. We say no. During the day, people leave their animals out to pasture. The owner left it a bit late. It went into twilight. Then now so if the para was royin baderech bayom, we said then it's a hanach. But if it's running, see, running is not so good. But how we have to look at another deed. If it's facing the city, the animal is running home. But if you see an animal running to the opposite direction, yes, harezu aveda. Harezu aveda means these are all kevan presumptions. These are the presumptions based on what you have to do. Halacha dal. Thank God for the coffee that He created. There's nothing. Lahavdal. I mean, Torah is Torah, but in the Divrei Reshus, nothing better. Halacha dal. But so roya bein akram. If you find an animal pasturing in the vineyard, again, before we spoke about running, now the animal won't get injured. The animal, because it's not running, but the vineyard is going to get damaged. Now, guys, we began this topic by saying that an aveda of a goy is something that you're not chayiv to return. Of course, the Rambam says if you do it, you make a kiddush Hashem. You're not chayiv. So therefore, your obligation to take the cow out when it's running, not when it's running, when it's pasturing, is to prevent damage in the field. So halachic, if therefore eina aveda, you're not chayiv lahachzir. If you do a kiddush Hashem. But on the other hand, even if it belongs to a guy, if you know the owner, and you know that when the owner will find someone else's cow, doesn't matter who's ruining his vineyard, he's going to kill the cow. So then, if the cow belongs to a yid, again, you have to prevent the cow from getting killed. Goes to the animal, and the guy has the right to do it. Right? If you have a mazik in your property, you have the right to stop that mazik from being mazik in your property. And therefore, furthermore, more examples. If you find a cow standing in the Rishus Rabim, if it's outside the Tchum Shabbos, then Chayv Lahachzir. If it's pasturing on grass, or if the cow is in a corral that's not closed, but right now it's not lost, or certain corrals are so uncomfortable for the cow for whatever reason, whatever's in there will run away. No, there's nothing in there that will be ma'abed, but the corral is open. Lo yigaba she'ein zu avedo. Speaking about domesticated animals, if there's no reason for them to run away, they'll remain there. The same concept. You think you're doing a service. You don't know, the guy knows his part is staying here. Now, matzah kardam italis b'tzad haggadah. If you find a kardam, an axe, or a garment on the side of a wall, don't touch it. People place things at the side of something. That, I don't know. When it's out there in the field open, more likely it was lost. Why would I put it up some mitten? And if there's no simon there, how would I even know where to get it back from? You understand? B'tzad haggadah, beautiful. But so on b'seratya, seratya is a thoroughfare. Harezu aveda. And you have to remember that even b'seratya, the Rambam already mentioned, sometimes when you find something b'seratya, then we say, even if there is a simon, if roif people that go there are goyim, if roif people that go on the road are goyim, the owner will have yush. So the Rambam is not retracting from that at all. Okay, he's just speaking about what location leads us to think it was hanacha or nefila. That's the topic of this chapter. Halacha. If you find young doves whose wings were tied, see, that means that they're not hefker. Why do owners tie the wings? For them not to fly away, but they can hop. And they're hopping behind the fence, or behind a wooden fence, or in a lane. In fields, here also the fact that the wings are tied. Now, can they be medaded? We learned so much about it. 50 amas, yeah, but there's a limit how far they can go. The owner put it there. He knows already that he'll have to look a little bit more.
What about Tsar Balachayim?
No, there's no Tsar Balachayim in that. That's the common practice. What you guys do with your dogs, that's Tsar Balachayim. Just kidding. I don't know. That's the way people have doves. They tied up the wings. Now, 1 second. Even the Gemara has a shaila about that. Because on the other hand, the other side is, no, even though doves' wings are tied, it can hop. They can hop away. He wouldn't leave them there. So any shaila that the Gemara doesn't have a solution for, that I'm not every, many times, paskins the suffix, which means on one hand, don't take it. But if you took it, then it belongs to you. Because once it's in your demuchzak, we say, no, the owner, it was derech nefila. There's no simon over here. And therefore, you get the gift. But even on the tzad that it fell, when is it yours? Because it has no simon. The Rambam says, I know the dove itself doesn't have a simon. The dove itself. But if the type of knot is a unique type of knot, then the knot becomes a simon. Remember, if they were fixed and not hopping, so there's a concept of, the Rambam already spoke about it, that the makoim is the simon. So then, even if it was derech nefila, he'll remember where it fell. And he can say it fell in that location. That might be a simon. Then now we did begin speaking about finding something in a garbage heap that's buried. And the Rambam already said that's a right that the person put it there. The Rambam is going to go back and he's going to give other nuances to that. Derech nefila means when it fell, he didn't place it there. But it's very common that people know, I know that I had my doves until when I came to that fence. Shortly afterwards, all of a sudden, I didn't chop it. It was found by the fence. People know more or less where they lost it, even though they didn't place it. This thing that we learned, and Taka the Rambam already said that hold on. Now, garbage dumps at times are cleared out. So now we have to add that now. If the garbage dump is a place that's normally never cleared out, which is Taka, why if someone wants to hide something, you think about it, that might be the smartest place. The gun, if you're traveling, in your garbage, you put your diamond ring. Like, who would look over there? But now what happens if you know that it will be cleared out? You're doing a service to the owner by taking it out, because once it's cleared out, he will lose it. You're preventing it from losing it. Another rule, like a knife. or a shapud or a spit because we say that when people throw things out on the garbage, and it's common that when you're throwing things out, little things in your pocket will fall out without your knowledge. So here another nuance, small kalim. I would say just add a lot of common sense. The Rambam is making sure that you have common sense. And there are certain further details given that you can't legislate. You have to push it. Every case is a case. You have to have first Yira Shamayim to be connected to God. You have to have a lot of knowledge and Torah. And then the final, but which is also important, is common sense. We're going back to Mamash Girsa the Yankis, and hopefully we all will have the schos of learning this with our kids and grandkids. So Matzah Peres Mefuzarim, right at the beginning of the second chapter. So if it's Derech HaNacha, if you see who was intentionally placed down La'iga Bahen, Derech Nefila Harim Shaloi, Chein Matzah Kikrois Ketan Nois, Shal Shabaylam, if you find small sheaves of grain, Rishus Arabim, Sharei Ein Bahem Simen, Oisha Matzah Igul Idvela, if you find cake of pressed figs, I can see my kids, Nebuch, not Nebuch, Baruch Hashem, but the chaziring and getting frustrated to remember this, to remember that. Or if you find loaves of bread that are made by a baker, right? As we learned over there in the beginning of Elam Mitzias, that if it's made by a balabayas, every person has their own mold. Anything that's made commercially, they look alike. There's less of a siman. Or umachzoide shel dogim, strings of fish. Or v'chaticha shel basar, of a shtik lachmit, not shtik lachmit that were cut in a unique way. Stam shtik lachmit that they all look the same. The gizet semer habois mimidin hasan, raw wool that is coming from the country proper. In other words, they are not yet worked out. All look alike. Fanitze pishtan, or bundles of flax, over l'shoy noishalad gaman, strands of purple wool. All of these cases. Number one, if it's b'rishus harabim, b'fuzarim, it fell. Number two, there's no siman. We put them all together. And what's the chiddush? The Rambam has to write no, because when you find something b'rishus harabim, one might have argued that ultimately the siman will be worn off because people kick things around when they walk on the Rishus Harab. And there was a logic to say that a siman that's ha'asui lihidarais, one svara was, it's not a siman. We don't pass it that way. If when you found that it's a siman, the owner won't have yush, he'll hope that it was found prior to being kicked about so much, there was still a siman, so he's going to look for it. In contrast to the nachman. In other words, it's distinct. I promise you, if I make a loaf of bread, you'll know that it was not made in a bread. You'll see. Or in other words, it was already processed. Now, when something is dyed by a craftsman, every uman, it's already unique. It's not the same. The kadayayin, the kadashaman, sealed. That's what we learned in the Gemara. Sealed jugs, because the seals look different. The jugs look the same. Earthenware utensils, we already learned in the previous chapter. They have distinctive identifying marks. However, what happens if the seal is broken? Why would it be broken? Because in other words, it's during the season when people are wholesaling it. You can argue even though there is some mark of the seal. Once you open the seal, what's distinct is the seal. If you remove the seal, the fact that there is a mark of the seal, that's already equal in everything. That what? That anything that has the same form for many, there's no siman. So same weight, the same tzura. I'm sorry, there's no siman, you got to keep it. Now all of that is where small sheaves of Rishus Harabim. But if you find these these small sheaves, so let's go back to the rule of this chapter. Only if it's derech nefila hareim shaloi, because there's no siman. But remember something: when you find something in the Rishus HaYachid, there's already a higher chance someone placed it there. Vim derech hanocha chayv lahachnis. First of all, you shouldn't have taken it. If you took it, you have to be chayv lahachnis at the beginning of this chapter because the makim is a siman. Makim siman. And I want you to know that here there's a big issue because that we did learn that I'm on Paskin before that a siman she'ein movik is not a siman. So first of all, many people have another gears. But perhaps, like we already mentioned, when we began the whole concept of siman, that there's really 3 levels. I think that's the solution. B'chalam the Rambam. There's a siman she'ein muvik at all, like we said, color. Then siman muvik has in itself 2 categories. And that's the general approach of everyone. B'shita Rambam b'chalam this whole sugya, and therefore the Rambam sometimes will say, Afa pi she'ein siman muvik. He's going to call the intermediate siman ein muvik relative to the greatest siman. Greatest siman, we said, was a hole on top of the letter, and the other intermediate, which the Rambam already spoke out, it's the weight, it's the measurement. It's not muvak, but it's muvak enough. Or again, or the Rambam actually says because it is maybe the girsa is because it's a siman muvak. Now matzah alumais, if you find larv sheaves, remember that from the Gemara, right? Kirichais is small and alumais, ma'almim alumim is large. What's the difference? The difference is that why is Rishus Harabim worse than Rishus Hayachid? Because Makim is not a siman, because things are kicked about. But even in the Rishus Harabim, there is a certain size that when people see something that big, they walk around it. And the owner, is it shaykh that someone kicked it? Yeah, but the owner won't have yush because Makim is a siman, and he'll presume that it wasn't kicked about. That's Krichais versus Alumais. Matzalumais, Mem Rishus Hayachid, Mem Rishus Harabim, Leitel Machres. Halacha Yudal. Matzah eagle, if a person finds this pressed cake of figs, they squeeze the figs into this round mold, and inside, now they're all the same, but in it there's a shard or kikar, and in it there's money. Or there's a piece of meat that's cut mishuna. We spoke about people because the whole sugi of basash and a Solomon or ayin, certain of them Amoraim, they would make it into a triangle. They would cut their meat in a way that no one else did it that way. A fish that has a bite in it. That's a siman. It's a middle of eating it. I lost it. So I know there's a bite mark. Because we say, I don't know, I'm emphasizing because the other side would be maybe it happened stam and the owner won't remember. The owner only won't remember that it's cut different if it was cut different unintentionally. Something that's done with intent or something that people remember. Halacha Yudis. Matzah peiros mefuzarim v'makim hagiranois. So let me say like this: that when you find fruits, that they are scattered in the place of grain heaps. Now you have to stand like this. We're speaking about a location in which the owner already took the grain home. That's the chiddush. So therefore, there's a svara to say that anything that's found there was abandoned by the owner. So we say it depends. That's the beginning of Elam Metzias. These fakers. 1 kav and 4 amas. Remember that? What about 2 kav and 8 amas? What about a half a kav? That was a whole lot. If you find a kav of 4 amas, or be yasser a lot of amas, in other words, it's so scattered that there is a lot of effort needed to gather it. Comes a certain point where a person says it's not kedai the effort, then hareu shaloi, because that little amount of produce in such a large area, the owners won't trouble themselves to gather it. But if they are mefuzarim, same amount of a kav, but in less than daladamis, lo yigo bahem, because if the owner did not abandon it, we don't know. If he didn't abandon it, he's going to go retrieve it. And that's again going back to the topic of this chapter, that if it was derech hanacha, don't touch it. Question is, what happens? No, it's kav, but arba amos is already, we say that even if he left it, he's not going to gather it. It's not kedai for him. So now what happens? Chatzi kav v'shtei amas, 2 kav and 8 amas. Oisho yakav v'shnayim shloisha minim. Maybe he won't gather it because it's not 1 min. Like it's both shumshumin and tomarim and imonim. All of this that's the boy in the Gemara. Kol elu safik. And therefore, on one hand, we say lo yikach because all of this might be derech hanachasan and he might gather it. But if you gathered it, the other side is that ein chayv lahach because there is no simin. Halacha yud gimel hamoitzi tziburi peides. If you find a collection of fruit or peides b'kli or kli kamay shuhu pile, how was it pile? That's a simin. Peides in a keli is a simin. The keli itself has a simin. What happens? The peides mifuzarim have no simin. So what happens if you have a keli and it's turned and there are peiros outside of it? Here, the Rambam again will give examples of common sense. We'll see in a moment. Where are they? Remember that? If it's in front, it's not on the front of the opening. It's on the other side. So you can't say that it came from. Matzah keli ulafan of peiros. So we say, Hare elu shaloi. And now I can just say, I'm reading the words that we have over here. Hare elu shaloi ha-peiros v'akeli. I'm reading Rabbi Evan Yisrael's Rambam. I don't think this is correct. I know that in other Rambams, the Fedish, there's another Girsa. I think that even he, who was very medayik, I think made a mistake. The words that I found in my house in another Rambam was that the Pedis is yours, Pedis mifuzarim, and a Keli, the words are Hakeli noitelo machas. I'm just reading another Girsa, not written over here. That fits. It fits with the flow. Because if you would say it's the same person, remember we learned to find two things near each other. We learned yesterday. One has a simon, one doesn't. You don't get to keep the item without the simon, because we say it came together. The Rambam is going to add more details. If the peiros are not towards the opening of the turned over keli, they are on the opposite side, then nothing leads us to say the peiros came from it, and that's why one thing has nothing to do with the other. But ain by simon regarding the fruit. Now, but if it looks like they came from the same owner, be careful, then chayv lahachnis, because whoever will give a simon to the keli and then will claim, and the peiros were also there, will get the peiros. So what will be an example of when does it appear that it came together? When achoyrakli means the bottom, the close part of the keli. This is here, whoever sees, and the peiros are here. No, if the peiros would have come from this container, it would have been, even though tipped over, it would have been outside the opening. But now, even if it's even if the peiros are opposite the opening of the keli, another detail is there a rim? What's the rim? A rim prevents things from flying out. If a keli is overturned, I know every case is a case. Depends how big the keli, depends how big the rim. If there is a rim, there should have been some of the peiros left inside it. And if there's nothing, then again you get to keep it. Because some of them would have been because of the rim. And indeed, if some of it is inside the keli, some of it is outside, then we got to get moving. If a person finds berries that were set out to dry on the road, even if they are next to a field of berries, we say you get to keep it. Why do you get to keep it? Because we say that they were blown off the trees by the wind, particularly because owners don't lay out these types of produce on the ground because they have a very thin skin and they get ruined easily, in contrast to other types of potatoes that have a thicker klipa. Same thing with the date. That's or a berry bush. It's not called gazela. It came from that tree. I know it came from the tree. The owner has yush right away because it gets ruined because it fell down. That we know so much it's hefkin that you don't have to be ma'aser. But that's dafka when it comes to these types of berries, avol or carrots. No, because they don't become repulsive when they fall down. Dates, dates that are blown off the tree by wind, mutarais, because that's the presumption that the owners are moichelet. However, in other words, it's not that they can't prove it came from them, it's because they're moichel. So now that Rambam is adding another detail. Ketanim don't have the koyach to be moichel. Another than if you know that the owner is mak, but he's not a moichel guy. How do you know he's that? You see, he made efforts to surround the area of the trees to make sure that whatever falls, he will stay, he will gather. If we see that he set up a certain contraption that if something falls, he should be able to gather it, you know he's not moichel. Hareni moichel doesn't go to this. But halacha yud zayin chot tulra another din. A chotara means a bad cat. I don't know what a good cat means, but a pet that's a chayera. Shahoyre gesaktanim. So the din is osur lekaymoi. You're not allowed to keep it. And furthermore, anyone who takes it is not chayv on gesela. If you lost it, you're not chayv to return it. This chayara, if you kill it, the hide has value. Chazal didn't want you to raise it to begin with. You understand? So nothing is yours. Ela kol hamoitza yizoichaboy, v'hargoy, and you get to keep the hide. Kevin smiles. That's the rule when it comes to these halachas. Halacha, I don't know about the killing it or the keeping the hide. The halacha yutches. I'm with you. I chap it. Goizel and imsakot of l'shoivich. Now, if you find a goizel, a little dove, a little fegala, near the dovkot, so this is the rule of the 50 ounce. If it's b'tei chamisham amma, we say belongs to the bala shoivach. Chutz chamisham amma, then hanezel shel moitzai. Don't forget this goizel has no siman. You can't say it was near and therefore no. It normally it wouldn't have gone more than 50 hours. Now, by the way, the Gemara gives exceptions to that, but that's the normal rule. What happens if there are two dafkots and you find this? It's within 50 amma from the one to the right and 50 amma from the one to the left. Who gets to keep it? Remember that karoif, closer one. This is big rules. And if it is in between, theoretically, yachloik. The final detail of this chapter. I know we follow Karoiv closer, but there's something else called Roiv, Karev and Roiv. Roiv means what happens if in one dovkot there were 1,000 doves and the other one there were 20. So there's another logic. Something that came from the Roiv. But we saying it came from the Karoiv. So what happens if you have to juxtapose these two logics? Karev or Roiv, how do we pass? And this is the ground zero, my friends. If they're equal, the only thing is Karev. You follow the Karev. If it's Be'emsa Yachloiku, we follow Roiv more than Karev. That's the rule. Hidden to be continued.
Nice. Thank you.